Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kim Barrett Show. I'm your host, Kim Barrett, and on today's episode, we are joined with a throwback episode by Mr. Ashton Agar, Australian cricketer. So if you ever wanted to perform at an extremely high level, this is the episode for you. This is part one. And of course, if we can ever help you at a high level with your marketing, head over to our free community, www.joinmygroup.com.au. But until then, let's jump into the show. All right, guys, very pleased to have Mr. Ashton Agar join us today. So if anyone isn't aware of him, international cricketing sensation, represented Australia, playing all over the world, moved to Perth when he was just 18 years old, and has been living here now for the last 11 years. Yeah. And just an all-round great person to chat to. Me and him caught up on Monday, had a great chat, and I'm very pleased to be able to bring him here today to talk to you guys. We'll do a little bit of a chat first, then open up to some Q&A as well. So, guys, please give him a round of applause. Oh, this is very hot, but it's good. So, Ashton, first thing I would love to kick off with, for anyone that doesn't know, let's say you ran into someone at a party or something like that, and you're chatting to them and they said, what do you actually do?
What do I actually do?
How do you describe yourself?
Funny question. I always like to think of myself as a person, first and foremost. When I introduce myself to someone, like I'm Ashton Agar. I'm a brother to my two best mates. I'm a husband, a son, and ultimately for a job, I play cricket for Western Australia, the Perth Scorchers and the Australian cricket team. So, for the last 11 years.
Yeah, beautiful, man. I love that. And how did you get started? Because did you, obviously some kids when they grow up, they're like, I want to be a cricketer, I want to be a football player. Yeah. How did you first start?
In cricket?
Well, what led you up to that? What did you think you were going to be like if we wound back the clock to, 6-year-old Ashton?
Yeah, 6-year-old Ashton. I grew up in Melbourne, so obviously it's a massive, it's a sporting capital, really. Sports everywhere, and it is just cricket in the summer and footy in the winter. So in the wintertime, I wanted to be a footballer, and in the summertime, I just wanted to be a cricketer. And I was really lucky, first and foremost, to be born into a wonderful family. I have amazing, supportive parents. So, and I have two brothers, and they would drive us all, to 3 different grounds in the winter, 3 different grounds in the summer. Dad would throw us balls, hour after hour. I'd play with my brothers until it got too dark to see a tennis ball at night, or someone broke a window, or someone was crying. That's sort of how it went in our family. And we had great support from our parents the whole time. So it was just something that we loved doing. We loved it so much that we got better and better. And then I didn't grow till quite late. So I started hating footy. I was getting smashed by these massive dudes with chest hair and stuff when they were 15. And I thought, I've had enough of this. Started, probably in cricket a little bit more seriously. And it's led to where I am now.
Mm. And obviously, did you go from that loving cricket to going, I'm just going to be in cricket? Or was there a pathway and anything that came along that kind of diverted you away for a little bit? Or was it always 100%?
No, absolutely. I think from the early days with my parents, it was always, they always told myself and my brothers that we could do anything we put our minds to. And it sounds very cliche, but we were told that, and we've all grown up believing that. Whether that be, cricket or our studies as well, that was something that was really important for us at home. So I had 2 stress fractures in my back in year 12, started year 12. So when things started getting pretty serious with cricket, I was in the Australian under-19s team at that time. Got these 2 stress fractures, had to have basically a year out of the game, which was perfect for my year 12 studies. And at that time, I was like, all right, I'm going to put my focus into year 12. And I want to be a lawyer. That's what I wanted to do. Purely because I quite like the movie star aspect of it, to be honest. I like being able to use my brain, speak, solve problems, and look pretty cool on TV. I'll be honest with you. I want to be a criminal defence lawyer, and I now know that is not as movie star as it seems. My wife's a lawyer, and it's the last thing I want to do. So, but that's what I believed in. So there were absolutely setbacks there. But then when it got to the point where I was up at the academy, the National Cricket Academy in Brisbane, one day training with the Australian under-19 team. This is a year on from that day. Got a call from Western Australia. Had no idea what the number was. I've never seen this number. I was like, what is this 08? And I was with a couple of Western Australian boys there, Ashton Turner, Cameron Bancroft, great players themselves. And I said, Western Australia, we should pick it up. So I picked it up. Ashton Oliver from Wacker, we want to contract you for this amount of time. These are the details, have a think about it, speak to your parents and work it out. Unfortunately, I decided to move, having never been to Perth before, when I was 18, and it's easily the best decision I've ever made.
That's amazing. And was there any doubt in your mind of taking the contract, or were you like, not like I'm going to play cricket now, but that's it?
Yeah. So I've always been extremely close with my family. I love them to bits, but at that time I was very focused on my cricket. This was the most exciting opportunity, and it was a chance for me to realise my childhood dream of being a professional cricketer. And I was also 18, so I hadn't had a lot of life experience. So it was very easy for me to say, yep, I'm going to do it. Like, I remember calling Dad and I was like, Dad, I've got to move to Perth. Like, I'm sorry, man, basically. Which is pretty quick thinking in that sort of moment. And, you know, if you're a few years older than that, you probably don't think that way. And it was kind of that, you know, the blissful sort of youth that I had. But they were supportive. We spoke to Victoria, but we just looked at it from a position of, well, am I going to get the right opportunity in Victoria? No. I think my opportunity looks better in Western Australia. It doesn't have to be a forever thing. It could be 2 years, which was the length of the contract to start with. I know some people over there, and I think it'll be okay. So took it on with the support from my family, and yeah.
And what's the transition? Because obviously that's a call up to play for WA as a state.
Yeah.
What's the transition from there to getting the call up to playing for Australia?
Yeah, it was crazy. It happened really quickly for me, which is quite unique. Doesn't happen a lot. I'd played 2 games for Western Australia, 2 red ball games, and I'd bowled really well at that time. And as has been for the last 11 years, I've always been searching for another spinner after Shane Warne. And because I'd done well in those 2 games, there was a tour of India coming up in 2013. And I got called up to go to this India tour. I had no idea what was happening. I was just playing games for Western Australia. It was my first 2 games ever in a professional environment. I get to India. I play these 2 practice games there. I don't end up playing the first test match. Thank God. Like, I wouldn't have been ready for that. But I was told when I got home that I was that close to debuting for Australia after those first 2 games. But as I said, I was too young to even realise that. I was just really immersed in my cricket. But then played more for WA the rest of that season. So I only probably played 6 games. Was on an Australia A tour that winter, 2013. And then made my test debut, when I was 19 years old in the Ashes, which was a pretty big deal at the time.
One to kick off with. I have so many questions to ask on these ones, but what level of pressure did you feel going into, especially like the Ashes, being like not the pageantry, but like the history behind it and things like that?
Yeah.
Did that come into your mind? Or were you just like, I'm just going to get out there, bowl some balls, hit some balls? Like,
the good thing was I was already in England. So I played an Australia A tour in England. And then I was called up like from that squad. So John Inverity called me, good Perth man. And he said, Ashton, you're staying on. And I was like, thanks, Invers. What for? You know, I just wasn't even thinking in that sort of space. He's like, we want you to stay on for the first 2 tests. And the other person who got called out of that squad for the first 2 tests was Steve Smith, who's arguably Australia's best ever batsman now. So it's crazy how these things sort of happen. And that blew my mind, but I was lucky I didn't have to face that in Australia, because that's when you really see the media. You go to the airport, you're swamped with media heading to England, on the plane, the stopover, all of these things that build up the occasion. I was already there, and so I got to miss that little part. Yeah. I was playing cricket at the time, so I didn't have to do too much preparation as a young player. I just had to be ready to try and play. And then basically on a night out, we were in Worcester. We were about to play a practice game a few days later, but Michael Clark thought it was a good idea to get all the boys out, have a drink together, get the group together. It was a hell of a night. But
fun, lit, crazy.
Yeah, not crazy. No, not crazy, but we had a lot of fun.
One more adjectives.
I think you said lit. I think it's But I was, and that moment, that night, Michael Clark sat next to me. Brad Haddon was on this side of me, and Michael Clark tapped me on the leg and he's like, "Are you ready to go, youngster?" And I was like, yeah, like go to the next place, whatever. I was 19 thinking we're going to another bar. And he's like, no, for next week. And it like hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew exactly what he meant for next week. He goes, basically, the only way you don't play is if everything goes to shit in this tour game that's coming up. And he goes, I believe you're way too good to do that. So he said, get ready, get your head wrapped around it, and let's have a good time, basically. And that was huge. Like Michael Clark was a guy that I looked up to since I was like pretty young. I watched his test debut, like I listened to it on the radio as well on the way home from school. And for him to say that and instill that confidence in me was enormous. And then I found myself in the first Ashes test at Trent Bridge.
That's amazing. Yeah. And how do you, because obviously, especially like I liken a lot of stuff in sport to business and things like that. Mm-hmm. And like for me, when you kind of like level up the people that you surround yourself with, you're forced to play at a different level because it's kind of somewhat like sink or swim. So the people that you spend time with, you know, the old adage, like you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. How did you find that affect your game? Like obviously going from playing with state players, who a lot of them are great, obviously cricketers, to going to play for Australia, did that kind of level you up as well, just with the people around you?
Definitely. You notice a little bit of a shift in the preparation aspect of things, I think. Everything becomes very specific. Everyone knows exactly what they need to do to perform. Guys understand what makes them good players. They have blueprints. So they might go 2 days before a test match. They have their little markers that they need to tick off. A lot of guys won't train the day before, or some guys will just as a little top up or a little expression session to basically have some fun. So there was a bit of a shift in that. But other than that, I was lucky. I had some really great people in Western Australia in my first few games. Justin Langer had just taken over as our coach, and he's one of the most influential figures on my career. You know, I could speak about him for ages. Mike Hussey was my first captain at WA, Adam Voges. So I had some really good leaders to play under who were able to teach me a few things as well. But then you just feel everyone rise a little bit to the sense of occasion that is international cricket and an Ashes series. And that's a good thing to feel because it's like the next stepping step. It's like you get to that level, it's like, okay, you're here now, but how do you stay in that? How do I stay engaged? And you have to feel something in yourself that drives you forward, that drives you to keep getting a little bit better. And when everyone around you is trying to grow, trying to get better, like you just naturally lift up. And if you aren't trying to do that, you drown pretty quickly.
What's that experience like? Because obviously for us as business owners, yes, sometimes there's another business trying to like snap at your heels to take clients from you. So that's what it feels like sometimes. I'm always a big person of like collaboration over competition because there's always more clients. And whilst the business is individual, there's obviously like support you can have around you. How do you find that in cricket when you've got, obviously you're wanting to inspire and help people in the team and you're representing either the state or the country, but you're also like, shit, they also could come and take my job, basically. Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, experience definitely helps. So I think you go through these weird transitions as a player. So you start young, like I was 18, 19 years old, and cricket was my focus. And that's exactly what you want it to be. You're focusing on your cricket. You're just trying to get better because you're trying to make that leap into the professional system. All of a sudden, you start making some money. There's a lot more distraction outside of the game. People are trying to take your spot and you get very distracted and you start thinking about that. You bring that into your game. And as a result, you're focusing less on the cricket, the thing that got you there in the first place, on growing and building your skills. It's the only way you get to that level. You don't get there by focusing on, all of these external motivators. All of these motivators are so intrinsic for me to start with, and I think they are for any kid who tries to play professional sport or anyone who's doing something that they love. And then now I've come through that, and I was lucky. I went through a phase where I think one of my Cricket Australia contracts, it was a great contract, and I'd never seen something like that before, and I got too focused on that, on how to try and keep it. Do I try and play minimising damage and be safe? And when you do that at an international level, when you're not fully engaged in what's in front of you, and you don't express yourself, you don't play on skill, it drops away and you die. And that's what happened. I lost my contract. And fortunately, I've been able to come through that now, and I feel like a kid again. I'm playing because I like the game. I'm playing because I want to grow and explore everything that I can be out on the cricket field. And I've worked out it's a lot more fun doing that And it was really stressful when I wasn't. And it's funny, I had this advice from Saqlain Mushtaq. He's a Pakistani spinner, Muslim man, very spiritual. And he said to me I met him when I was 17 up at the Cricket Academy. And it's the first time I'd ever heard people talking about money and contracts in the sport. There were a lot of professional players up there at the time. They were all talking about these sums of money that I'd never heard of before. And I was like, Saqlain, why are they talking so much about that? And he like pulled me up to the oval and he's like, just listen to this. He goes, that's the sun, you know, and pretend the sun is cricket. And he goes, now turn your back to the sun and you can see your shadow. And he's like, that's all the money, that's the fame, that's all of these things that will come with it. And he goes, now walk away from the sun, walk away from cricket and try and catch your shadow. So he's got me walking, I'm like trying to catch this shadow. And he's like, so you will never catch that. And then he goes, now turn around and walk towards the sun, walk towards the game, walk towards cricket, walk towards that child in you that just really enjoys it for what it is. And he says, now look behind you and you know, your shadow follows you. And he said, it's all just following you. And I think that's how I'm trying to do it now. It was like super profound
that's very
analogy.
Deep. Yeah.
But, it's quite beautiful and it's easy to understand. And I think it's really transferable over a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And how did you, because obviously, same in business, it's like you'll go through seasons where business is up, business is down. Clients drop you drop clients, and you have to kind of pick yourself up, dust off and go on. Like, what was it like for you and what did you maybe like deploy in yourself when you lost that contract?
Yeah.
Because I suppose for some people that could be like, okay, cool, like game over sort of thing. How did you keep yourself going and then obviously be, you know, to the point where you recalled and new contract again?
I think you have to be really honest with yourself, and that's usually the hardest thing to do. It's really difficult to say that you weren't good enough in that moment. I was doing it for the wrong reasons, and I had to tell myself that, and I had to feel that emotion. You almost feel like you've let yourself down, but sometimes you just have to go through. These things happen, but I guess it's how you come out of it. So understanding, right, what were my motivators then? All the wrong reasons. What are my motivators now? What do I need to put my focus back into to get where I want to get? And I realised I need to be the best cricketer that I can be. I need to be focusing on what is immediately in front of me, not what is far away, which is another contract at the time. You know, that's a whole year of good cricket away from maybe getting another contract. Like playing for Australia is always the end goal. For me, narrowing my focus and shortening my sight into just ticking off the little things step by step by step. And I started doing that. I wasn't worried about any competition, just trying to improve myself. And honestly, practicing that in all of my little things in everyday life, like what's in front of me right now, put my focus and engagement into that, then move forward. Now I was able to complete these little goals and ultimately end up back where I wanted to be. But I guess that's high performance. I think just pure total engagement, that's where you feel the flow state. You know, there's a lot of people speak about that, but it's a beautiful space where you're not thinking of anything, where you've put in a lot of preparation. It's all there in your mind, but to be able to unlock that and let it just happen, you have to be fully engaged in what's in front of you, because as soon as you're thinking of something else, that's gone. That's gone, and you cannot fully focus on. You know, for me, it's a ball coming down at me. It might be a ball coming at me in the field, or it's just bowling a ball. But I know it's all there. I just have to be able to access that, and the way to do that, fully engage.
Love that. That's perfect. I remember there's like a great quote, and there's water there for you, man, as well, if you like.
Thanks, mate.
There's a quote from Will Smith where his dad like tore down their wall at their house and taught him and their brothers like the act of like just being able to focus on one thing at a time. And then they were like, Dad, we can't build a wall. Like, we're little kids. And he's like, I don't want you to build a wall. He's like, I just want you to lay each brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid, and then soon you'll have a wall.
Nice.
And I think that's like business, many different things. I think it comes across as the same. It's like, if you look at all the things you have to do in a business every day of, cool, we've got to run ads, we've got to do this, we've got to make sales, we've got to service our clients, we've got to make sure our team's happy, we've got to make sure that we're happy. Then we've got to make time for our relationships, then we've got to make time for our friends and family, then we've got to make sure that we do other stuff and have hobbies. It's like, it's overwhelming, all that sort of stuff. But as you say, if you can focus on one little piece at a time, and give it 100%. Like we were talking before about balance.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like, you know, does not exist.
Yeah, the balance is a funny one. You know, I think got a funny relationship with balance, and everyone says, you've got to have this great work-life balance. What's your life like outside of the game when you're going really well? To be honest, to try and get to somewhere and succeed and do really well and try and get to the top of your game, there's going to be periods where there's absolutely no balance, I think, because you have to put a lot of energy and focus into that one thing. That'll come with, maturity and, growth and understanding and how your life changes. But you have to put in a lot of time and effort and focus into something. So, and that is sort of the harsh reality of that. But, at the same time, I think if you are present, that makes up for a lot of things. If I get home and I can be present, so if I've practiced, right, what's my focus when I'm at home? Engage, be there with my wife, those sorts of things. It restores that balance really quickly. So it's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a really tough one, the balance aspect of things. But now I've gone through 11 years of this. I hope I have another, 6 more. It would be nice, depending on how my body goes. But thanks to that, I'll have a lot more balance moving forwards. But I've certainly been times where you have to make sacrifices, for sure. And for me, that's time away from my family, months away every year. But I don't complain about it because I know that's part of what I want to do. I just know when it is time to engage with the people I want to engage with, that I need to be there and fully focus on them. So how can you shift your focus and just fully immerse?
And then obviously going forward, touch wood, 6 more years out there on the field. How do you find then moving into a leadership role? Because obviously you had some great leaders early, and I'd love to know some of the things that they kind of instilled in you. But now that you're being looked to as a leader within the teams, whether it be locally for the Scorchers or internationally, how do you deal with that? And what sort of things are you bringing in from what people have shared with you to pass on to the next generation of cricketers?
Yeah, great question. So I'm part of the leadership group in the Western Australian team and for the Perth Scorchers. I think leaders, good leaders obviously positively influence and inspire a group to achieve a common goal. I guess that's the definition of leadership, but they are that all the time around their team. The best leaders I've played under, they have amazing self-awareness. They've all looked in first before they've tried to lead. They've tried to understand themselves, what makes them tick, understanding their emotions, what am I feeling? How does that manifest physiologically? What's the best course of action next? So their self-management skills on point so that when it comes to them to make the decision, they can effectively communicate with the people around them. And I think understanding themselves helps them understand other people. So for me as a leader, I'm looking to understand me, first of all, but I'm looking to understand my peers, understand why they may be feeling a certain way, understand how they think. Then you can find out what's the best way to communicate with them. You can sort of predict how they will respond, which is also a beautiful thing. You can work out what positions to put them in, when to give them opportunities to shine or when to challenge them a little bit more. And ultimately provide a space, a nice open space where people can grow. You want people who aren't afraid, who are happy to ask questions. You want to be approachable, where people are trying to learn and ultimately be there and feel empowered to go and express themselves when the actual pressure comes on.
And what about for the younger guys? Are you finding anything harder, easier communicating with them, helping, as you've got, say you've got yourself coming through, an 18-year-old coming through, playing with the teams, how are you finding that kind of, whether it be communication gap, or is there any difference that you're noticing in trying to get, fully get them engaged versus obviously slightly older players?
It's slightly a little less present at dinner tables and on their phones on their Snapchat and stuff like that. But I spend, technologically far more advanced than I am, even though I'm still quite young. But I think it's just about showing that you care. And like I said, showing that you understand their position. I was in that position, Although I'm not them and I haven't had their experience, I can understand a little bit about how they may be feeling, how they may be thinking, and it helps me communicate with them. It's about consistently checking in, not showing that you care once, but always caring about them, remembering what they've said, asking them about their goals. What are you trying to do at this session? I'm not sure. All right, let's work on something. Then you can sort of grow with them. That's a huge one, passing on your experience. You don't want to tell them what to do. I don't want anyone to be me. these guys coming through, they're amazing. They're going to be better than all the cricketers. They're going to be heaps better than me. They're going to be better than all the ones that have gone by because they've seen all of that and they're new. They're trying new things. So I'm not trying to put like my imprint on them. I'm just trying to help them through that journey, be a sounding board, someone they can trust, someone they can get honest feedback from, and then ultimately someone who can hopefully, motivate them and inspire them to keep moving forward. So, yeah, I just think looking to understand their perspective first, very, very important before you give your take on things.
Love that. I would love to hear, like, obviously you shared with me the other day, like, an experience you had with your brother. I would love for you to share a little bit about that because I think that just kind of shows it's like, number one, obviously, like, you can tell how much you care about your family and everything like that, which is amazing. But just like some of the feedback that you gave him as well.
Yeah. So when was it? Getting close to 2 years ago, I was on a tour of the West Indies with the Australian team, and my younger brother, Wes, was on that tour. He's my youngest brother. And I knew he was a chance to play at some stage. And it turns out he got selected for this one-day game, and I got to present him his one-day cap, which is like easily my proudest moment ever on a cricket field. Way better than anything I've ever done or even could do. I think giving him that cap, nothing has meant so much to me, like in my heart. That was amazing. So I remember I cried my way through the cap presentation. I feel emotional about it now. But the thing I said to him, I was like, mate, at some stage you're going to think to yourself, like, what if it all goes really wrong? It's very, very easy to think that way when you've made this leap and you're doing something new that you've never done before. But basically what I tried to say to him was just try and flip that on its head and think, what if it all goes right? What if it all goes better than I could have ever imagined? And just try and change his outlook on that. And in doing so, you open up this whole new world of what could happen. Sportsmen love to predict the future. Like, I think we'll go out there and do this and that, and it's all garbage. All we can control is our attitude, our effort, intensity, and be open to what might happen. That allows us to fully engage in what's in front of us, and the result will take care of itself. But it's that process and how we think that is most important. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned so far in my career.
And with your team, because obviously it's like, as you say, you can only focus on what you're doing. But let's just say like there's games where you're many, many runs behind, not many wickets left. And it's not just in your hands, right? It's in the team's hands. How do you make sure that your team stay uplifted and focused? And like, what sort of support do you give them when those scenarios happen? Because it can be not easy, but it's like, if you've done it yourself, 11 years of reps, you've got it under control. Yeah. But then you've got, someone or your brother or someone, they come on the field and it's like, man, we've got a lot of runs to get and not much time here. Like, or we've got to try and bowl them out really quickly. Yeah. What's the sort of the feeling and the vibes on the field at that time? Well,
I think I'll use the Scorchers at the moment as an example. We're a team who's at the top of their game, but we're a very well-connected team, and we're very aligned in the way that we think. And we're very consistent with that, no matter what stage in the game that is. And our two things, we always harp on our team first and be brave. And that is it. Under pressure, that's always the questions that you're asking yourself. What does the team need from me now? And how can I be brave in this situation to do what is required? And it simplifies everything. Like, the answers to those questions are just simply what you have to do moving forwards. And it helps you narrow your focus. And again, totally immerse in what, totally engage. So 2 years ago, we were playing the Big Bash final at Marvel Stadium, and we were in a lot of trouble. I think we were 4 for 20 and a few overs had gone by, like, really bad. And we'd blitzed it the whole year. And it was we were really confident going into that game. But like I said, you don't know what's going to happen. In finals, funny things happen. And we're 4 for 20 and Ashton Turner and Laurie Evans, arguably our two best batters, were at the crease. And Ash is amazing. He's our captain at the moment. And he is that leader of, like, he's very calm under pressure because he's got a really good, consistent process, good self-management. He's never had by his emotions, And he walked out there. Steve O'Keefe was on. He knew that it was his matchup. He would have asked himself, right, put team first, be brave. We need to get some runs here. The best way I know how to do that is it's to keep attacking. Even though it's easy to be safe in that situation, pumps his third ball for 6 over square leg, starts a bit of a flow going. They get this massive partnership. We ended up making 160, I think, and we won the game easily. If we don't take the positive option in that situation. If we try and minimise damage, we might scratch around, make 100 runs and we lose, all because we've tried to play it safe and lose small, you know. We weren't open to what could happen, to what if it goes really well, like I said before. So they're the really powerful moments, and I think that's where people can really shine.
Yeah, and similar, as you said, into business, I find like a lot of business owners they don't play to win, they play not to lose. Yeah. With everything that they do, you know, and it's like, because again, like you can play not to lose, not lose by much, versus like if you're going out there, and it's the same, like I watched the Scorchers final just last year or this year, and I was there and I was like, you can see like there's, you know, there's like fans behind you starting to like get ready because they're like, last 2 overs not going to be good. We don't want to sit here and watch, you know, their trophy presentation, and then the boys come out and then it's like a 6 and a 4 and a 6, and then they're like, oh, hang on, like this is, you know, where it could be easy to be out there and be like, let's just not lose by much. Yeah. Versus like actually going to win.
Can you just explain that? So I don't follow cricket.
Sure.
So at the end of the game, you guys are losing, but these guys come out and save the day.
But in this year, that's exactly what happened. But the context around what happened this year is we had a packed house at Optus Stadium, so probably 60,000 people. We're expected to win that game, absolutely. We have a young kid, Cooper Connolly, walk to the crease, who's 18 years old, in his second game ever of professional cricket. Goes out there, pumps his second ball for 6 and his fourth one for a 90-metre 6 in a shot that everyone was just like, where has that come from? You know, but everyone in the crowd would have thought like, how has he done this? If I look at our environment that we've created at the Scorchers, it's one where you express yourself, where you can make mistakes, absolutely, at training. You know, if you've got a clear plan and you're trying to work on something, no one gets good straight away. And you've got to be given the opportunity to fail, like many, many times. And we absolutely have that opportunity without judgment in our training sessions so that we can go out there and do those things on a big stage when it's required of us. Everyone trusts that the guy out there, they can get it done. That is the absolute belief we have, but we are really consistent. And I think also it depends on how you reflect as well. You know, you can't reflect on games. You know, if we want to be that type of team that's taking the game on, that's being brave, that's looking after one another, that's always trying to move forward and push the game forwards, we can't reflect really well when we win and be really happy, not say much, and then when we lose, go, bloody hell, you needed to rein it in at this point. That was really irresponsible of you. What are you doing? You know, you reflect, all right, what did we do really well this game? Were we team first? Were we brave? Did we meet our little KPIs? Maybe not. Then you go from there because you take real bits of things that you can either work on or you can continue doing or build on, and then you go again. And I think that's where your leaders come into play. You need to be that leader all the time if you want people to play for you and play with you.
And how do you find, like, because again, like into some business relations and connections, like obviously you've got a lot of people have teams and they have teams that are not with them all the time. And they've got to parlay that leadership to them and to instill in them that belief. How do you guys manage it when you're in the middle of a field surrounded by all of your opposition and there's 2 of you there, and you know that the rest of the team's obviously got your back and they're behind you, but how, like in those moments, like how do you guys communicate? How do you know that the rest of the team is like, yeah, cool, got your back sort of thing? Like how does that work from your perspective?
As in, so if you've got the 2 batters out in the middle and you're working together, I think it's about understanding one another, and that's having like close relationships in your team. So if I'm batting with Ashton Turner, for example, I've known him for a long time, but if I'm batting with him, I know that he likes to have his eyes level, head down the wicket and picking his hands up. So I just tell him, like, to keep him coming back to those things, you know, eyes level, pick your hands up. Just simple as that, understanding what makes someone tick, what helps them get back to that little space where you can just fully engage. Like I keep saying that, but like I believe so strongly in that. So I would say it's just, trying to understand everyone that, you know, who's under you, like all the important aspects of them, what helps them get into a zone where they can perform at their optimal level.
And what about the rest of the team that's in the locker room, like, or watching, like what with them, like how does that communication flow, if any at all? Or how do you kind of know, like, cool, you know, we're here with the job for the team, like, what to do next?
obviously a lot is dictated by the scoreline. So as professionals, we understand our scoreline and what we need to do. But if plans do shift, well, a message will get run from the rooms. The communication will be really clear and really short. You never want to send anyone a message in a time of like pressure that's hard to understand and maybe even too hard to implement. So something that's realistic and easy to understand is the message that will be run out, and then they can act on that, and they'll do that as a pair. But in Western Australia, this is where I think actually values probably come into play, something that you can always fall back on. Mm-hmm. Like I said, with the Scorchers, it's be brave and team first. For WA, it's trust, commitment and humility. Bigger things, because this is a group that's together for a lot longer. There's a bit more meaning behind all of them. The Scorchers, there's a lot of player turnover. So you need something short and easy to understand. But trust is like, we trust the person that's out there, that they're going to get the job done, and we do what we say we're going to do. And that's a value we live all the time. Commitment, we work hard and we're committed to our program at all times. Even though sometimes what we're doing might not suit our personal needs, that's what we're committed to. And humility is we don't know everything. We've got to be open to feedback, open to ideas. And so these are really easy things also to fall back on in times of pressure. Are we living our values? But the values piece is something that gets lost on a lot of people because often they don't reflect the thoughts of a whole group. So when you're coming up with these values, we had a whole day at one of our pre-season camps a few years ago at Rottnest Island. It took us a whole day to come up with this, and we had a professional come in and help us get to this thing. But it was a day-long process where everyone's thoughts are represented in these 3 words, and we understand the behaviours that come under them. We can clearly articulate them, and that means we can live them day in and day out. It galvanises the group and helps us move forward together.
What are the values for Australia?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So the big one we lean on is own your space in the Australian team. So it's about being ready to perform in that team, but like calm, composed and consistent is something that we always try and live by. And then own your space outside of the game. At the international level, there are so many distractions, but the coaches let us own our own space. They understand that we know what we need. We're at that top level. When you're there, you know exactly what gets you going as a player, what you need to do to perform. And they just create an environment that allows for that, for us, for people to express themselves and be the best player that they can be. When you get to that level, if you are overcoached or told what to do, it doesn't go very well because often you're at the top of your game. You don't need that. You just need an environment, conducive to still growth, but high performance in trusting the players and letting them express themselves as who they are and the players that they know they can be. So.
Love that. I've got one more question for you, then I'll have to open up for everyone else. But is there any questions that I haven't asked you that I should have?
Oh, gee, that's a tough question. Probably how I look after my mental health, I think, is a pretty big one for me. I've had a really turbulent journey with that over my career, and it hasn't always been something that's inside of the game of cricket. I've had some really horrible downtimes, and I've learned a lot about myself through those times, but I now understand how important it is for me to keep on top of my mental health so that my life at home is good and my life on the field is good. I know I spoke about balance earlier and how there are periods you're not going to have much, but I think when your mental health is compromised, that's a pretty big sign that you need to focus a little bit more on that. So for me, it's always seek first to understand is like the thing I always try and go by. So understanding me, understanding my own emotions and my own self-management strategies. How am I feeling? Why am I feeling that way? How does that feel in my body? What's the best way to combat that? Or what's the solution? And then I can keep moving forwards that way. Speaking up when you need to is a really important one, or seeking help was a huge one for me. And then it's really helped me in my interactions with other people. I'm a far more empathetic person because of that. And I think I'm a better player, I'm a better husband, I'm a better family member, I'm a better teammate because of that as well. Yeah, so I think, looking after your mental health, even though all of this is all really important, right? Like trying to do as well as you can, in business, in sport, but ultimately you want to be, the best person you can be at the end of the day. And your mental health is probably one of the key indicators of that. So looking after that as well as you can.
Awesome. Love that. That's the end of the first part of the episode with Mr. Ashton Agar. Stay tuned for episode number 2.